Force is strong in my family.
This is Tatooine Sons, the only fan podcast to name a canon Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by the writer-director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson. How are you gentlemen doing?
Doing well. Hanging in there.
Sam, you got the cold from Nathan. Now you're sick.
No, he gave me the cold.
This is different. Yeah,
Is
I
it
think
different
this is
cold?
just something
This is a
different.
different cold.
Do you have the Rona?
No.
No, something else.
I don't know. It's just annoying is what it is.
Mom thinks you have West Nile virus.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
You got a mosquito bite you need to be worried about?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Well, Nathan and I. So you didn't get to go yesterday, did you?
No.
But Nathan and I watched American Graffiti yesterday. What was that like for you, Nathan?
Strange. It's a strange movie.
I mean, it is made by the maker, George Lucas.
Yeah, I see where the Attack of the Clones dialogue came from.
Oh. Ouch.
It was better in this movie, though, but you definitely saw a lot of George Lucas little sprinklings throughout it.
Yeah.
But it was really good.
Yeah, I kind of walked through what we were talking about as
Yeah.
far as why you feel like it's so hard for you to connect with this movie.
Because I'm totally have no nostalgia for this era of culture that they were trying to portray. Because I did not grow up in this era, and it was so different than nowadays in so many ways, like just completely different. When it came out, people were nostalgic about their childhood and being teens in that era. That was just how it was. And so it's totally different for me now.
Yeah, this was your grandparents' teenage years, and it's not easy to connect with a movie that's all about that.
No, but it was still good.
It was a good story, good kind of characters and things like that.
Weird, but
I do think that gap between what it's like for you to watch it and then all the old people that came to the movie theater in there, I think it's a really great way to introduce today's episode about the metahumans in Kingdom Come, generation gap and all of that. So we're going to talk about that next after this little message from our friends over at the Christian Nerd HQ. This is Tatooine Sons.
We are the Reverend and the Reprobate, just two best buds interviewing people we have no business talking to. I'm Lucas Pinkard.
I'm Dan Gibson. These aren't tears on my face.
Every Thursday, we interview somebody else from our favorite fandoms and yours. You can check those interviews out on the Christian Nerd HQ network. You can find us on YouTube at RevRep Podcast at ReverendRep.com. And if you can't remember our name, just go to BaconOffice.com. It's way easier to find new episodes every Thursday. Thank you guys for supporting Christian Nerd HQ, and check out the Reverend and the Reprobate.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to it.
You went and saw Blue Beetle again this weekend. This is the second time for you.
It was.
It's the only one who's seen it twice. You were with some friends from church. Yeah, what'd they think about this movie?
they really liked it. You know, they thought it was going to be pretty mediocre from the trailers, which granted were pretty mediocre. And they were like, trusting that Nathan knows what he's talking about, but they also just thought that I really like movies and that I could just be very wrong. And I said, no, y'all are really going to like it. It's a really good movie. And they came out of it, and during credits, they're like, that was such a good movie. One of my friends really hit him hard, which was great. I mean, he cried a few times and started crying again during the credits and stuff.
Why do you think it hit him that way?
He comes from a Latino background.
Really? Okay.
And I think that might be one of the cases that really hit him hard, because, like, from what I know, his grandparents, like, they only speak Spanish.
Okay.
It's a very big deal in his household and all this stuff. So, I mean, he was like, there was a couple moments when he leaned over to me, he's like, that was so relatable.
Really?
I'm like, it's not relatable for me, but it was for him. And
That's
so
cool.
I think that hit him more closer to home. And it was great to see. He really liked it. He showed his mom the trailer today, and now she wants to go see it too.
Nice.
So it was really cool.
What's that like for you watching a movie that, I mean, it is, we talk about it, we hear about it. about the idea of representation in media and in these stories. And it's very clear from seeing the movie that this is very much representative of Latino culture and families and things like that. And I think we see it and we try to relate as much as we can to that from a family perspective. But there's a lot that we don't understand or we don't relate to because of that.
Right.
What was it like for you seeing this movie and with a friend that was being impacted like that so much? What's that like, kind of seeing it through his eyes?
It was really awesome because it made me appreciate the movie even more, because I loved the movie to begin with, but it made me appreciate it more because it just shows how well done that they made these characters and how well done they portrayed this culture and everything about it. And it was just, it just made me love the movie even more because of how accurate it was for all of that.
That's
stuff.
cool.
It was really cool.
That's awesome. Well, this is Tatooine Sons, and welcome to the show. Welcome. I got it wrong. I started saying the first teaser intro, but we'll say the right one. Yeah, welcome to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story, it is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we're in the midst of an 8-episode series looking at the iconic, amazing, groundbreaking DC Comics graphic novel Kingdom Come. Today we look at the Metahumans, the younger generation. Are they the antagonists or not?
I think they're just an unfortunate party.
Yeah.
Might be an interesting conversation.
Antagonist is like Magog and Lex. More Lex than anything.
So they're more of like the MacGuffin even in a lot of ways in this story. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit.
We'll talk about the pastor. Inspector. When's that?
Yeah, he's on the list.
He is? Let's go. Good.
Absolutely. So definitely going to talk about him with that. Before we get started on this episode, though, we want to take a second to thank all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for listening to this show. Like we talked about previously, thank you especially to those of you that make this your Tuesday appointment listening. You find a way to download this every Tuesday after it comes out. You listen to it, you message us, you comment on it, you share it, and that makes the world of difference to us. I mean, we're thankful to all of you that listen.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this on Sunday evening, we're just as thrilled that you listen to it. But we just wanted to give a special shout out to our Tuesday listeners because of how much that makes an impact on telling the directories that people like this show with it. So thank you.
Hope you like this show.
Thank you for doing that. Continue to listen and get the word out to your family and friends. And if you listen to it on a Sunday night, thank you as well. If you listen to it on a Saturday, then you need to get a life. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this. The Metahumans with this. They're the younger heroes in this story. They kind of operate in are they gray Jedi? They kind of operate in the gray with it. There's no such thing as gray Jedi. If you ask anybody that understands Star Wars, will know that gray Jedi can't work. But anyway,
what about Ahsoka?
She's not a gray Jedi.
She's a real Jedi.
She's a real Jedi. She's one of the greatest of Jedi. We actually did a whole episode on this about 3 years ago.
So what's like Yoda?
He's a failed Jedi. He's a failed Jedi.
Okay.
With that, that's another. Ezra's a missing Jedi. Anyway, these metahumans are living in that gray area, kind of unlike their predecessors, unlike Superman.
More than anything.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, Nathan. What factors do you think are in this story in Kingdom Come that contribute to this blurred line between right and wrong for these metahuman characters?
Kind of the unknown. They don't know what it's like to be a real superhero because they never grew up in that world where superheroes were kind of meant to be good. They got their powers and gained power in a time where it was kind of acceptable to be a different type of superhero than the legacy heroes that we've known, and that was really a big factor into their behavior. And they also had a factor of letting power get to their head. The whole great power comes great responsibility. Well, they just never heard that second part. They didn't know about the responsibility behind the powers because they just thought
it was the wrong universe.
Right. Well, that too. But but they kind of felt like the humans were lesser beings, and so that they just did what they could, fought all the time because that was just all they could do. If you have powers, that's pretty much what you feel like you have to do. But who do you fight if there's no supervillains left to fight. You fight each other, and then humans get in the way, and then you have casualties. And so it was just a lot of unknown and immaturity and just a lot of misguided ideologies.
Sam, from a real world perspective here, how do you feel like the metahuman, lack of understanding of right and wrong that these metahuman characters seem to have, especially in the first sections of these stories, how does that mirror sort of the wider societal debates that we have today about justice and morality and right and wrong and responsibility and that type of thing?
Well, without getting too into the weeds, because that's not what this podcast.
Although that is what we do.
We do tend to go there, but that's not what this episode's about. But yeah. I mean, you look around, you open up any social media, and it won't take you long to find the new generation is saying that they want one thing, and immediately in the next post, the older generation will say that they don't like the way things are turning out nowadays. It's the changing of the guard in a way. This isn't like a new thing. I think it's just more pronounced because of social media. You're just able to see it more, but there's always that generational conflict that arises between each generation, and I think with Kingdom Come, it's able to take this story or this concept and make it larger than life. So it's kind of easier in a way, making it bigger. It's easier to digest that way because it's more removed from reality. You're able to kind of take it in and ingest it in a different way.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying there about they're viewing things differently and how the world, younger generations view things differently than the older generations, and that creates that completely different perspective on that is really a central theme within this entire story of Kingdom Come. Sam, why do you kind of following up on what you just said? What does this generational divide kind of signify in the context of, in the story specifically, sort of the way that the society had evolved in Kingdom Come and that changing nature of heroism?
Yeah, I think Nate kind of touched on it a bit too in his answer, in that there was not really a need as much anymore for heroes. I mean, the old guard had done their job so well that there were no threats really. I mean, Green Lantern was he had Earth protected with his little floating fortress. Batman had Gotham under control. The Flash had I forget the city that he guards.
Is it Central City?
Is it Central City in this?
Usually Central City.
It's Central City.
I don't know if it's Central City in this one.
It's Central.
It might be Keystone.
I'm pretty sure it's Central.
I think it might be Keystone.
Anyway, there's no conflict. It's kind of like, I'm sure you've heard this adage before, but like hard times create good men create good times create weak men create hard times, right?
Wow, that was really good.
Thank you. I didn't come up with it. They're in this good times right now, and so the quality of the people, of the heroes, has diminished because they don't need to be good anymore. Well, there's their daddies and mommies, quote unquote, did all the work for them, so they can just sit around and beat each other up, because what else are they going to do with their abilities, like Nate said? So it kind of, I think that's really where we're at in the story.
Do you think you could repeat that phrase again? Because that was really interesting. I want to hear it again.
Shoot. Good men create good times. Good times. I started off weird. Hard times create good men. Good men create great times. Great times create weak men. Weak men create hard times.
Wow, that's really good.
I hadn't heard that before.
I think I had, but I didn't expect to hear it during this podcast, and so it hit differently. All right, Nate, based on that amazing statement that Sam just mic dropped, not literally because that would be expensive. With it, how do you feel like these conflicts mirror sort of the real world generational tensions that we have right now?
Yeah,
and where we're at in this time.
there's a lot of tensions between different generations just due to the fact that the younger generation kind of feels like they have it all figured out, and the older generation is all frustrated at the younger people for not having it all figured out. But then the older generation isn't actually teaching these younger people what they need to know, and these younger people are not willing to hear what's needed to be known. So there's this just consistent conflict between those two parties that it's like a paradox in and of itself. It will never get resolved. And so it's difficult for even in this story, that's pretty much what happens. The younger heroes don't want to hear what Superman has to say when he goes to his prison, even though that's what they're hearing 24/7 is what they need to hear. They don't want to hear it. They don't care. They know what they're doing. But the old generation, like Wonder Woman, is all frustrated that these younger people think that they have it all figured out and doesn't want to teach them what's needed to be taught. And so she just decides they need to be get rid of the younger heroes, which is pretty much what she's decided at that point, and gets all frustrated.
That escalated quickly.
Batman stops her. It works out in the end, but it's a good way of showing. This story does it in such a way of showing, each comic usually has some type of references back to the real world, and this one, that's really what it goes for. This generational conflict is one of the main things that it tries to touch on in this story for a lot of it.
It reminds me a little bit, as I think about both of your answers to this part of the conversation, it reminds me a little bit of, they call the generation that won World War II, right? They call that the greatest generation. That was what it was known, right? Having to face the just horrors of fascist Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan and all of the things that were going on in that, and the sacrifices that happened with that generation, even with the generation that was just right before that with World War I, and the depression in between, and all of that struggle, those hard times that created what led to the 50s and the 60s, which, especially the early part of the 60s, which led to this just vibrant, prosperous scenario where everyone had, a lot more than they needed, and you end up resulting. It reminds me a little bit of that movie we watched about American Graffiti, Nate, because what are young people doing all night long?
Partying,
just driving around in these cars and hooking up with each other and finding booze.
Literally, like going down a street, seeing how many people they can hook up with in one night.
Yeah,
that was really what it was.
It's it's the hard times of that, the things that their parents dealt with led to the prosperity that was in the 50s and the 60s, which led to this world that was just unbelievably carefree and decadent, which then kind of leads to some of the things that we saw in the late 60s and the early 70s, which is a lot of societal conflict, a lot of upheaval, and all of those things. And then that cycle continues on, right? So you have the Vietnam War era in the 60s and the 70s, and a lot of the financial just insanity that happened in the mid 70s, late 70s, which led to sort of this new boom, the greed is good boom in the 80s, with Reaganomics, and we're not getting into the politics of all of that, but everything that happened in the 80s, with which you celebrate and stuff like Back to the Future and the 80s movies that you see and stuff like that, which then leads to a generation of it's this thing is happening over and over and over again. And I wonder if there's anything that we can do to sort of correct those mistakes, or if those mistakes just have to play themselves out. Nate, what do you think, thinking about the origins of Superman and Batman and Flash and Green Lantern and that legacy generation of superheroes, their origins and their motivations? Compare that a little bit more for us with this Metahumans younger generation, and kind of, I know you talked a little bit about they came in and everything was good, but kind of help me understand a little bit more what their origin story is for that metahuman generation. Well, I'm not sure I grasp it fully.
I'm sure that their origins were pretty, I don't know. I'm sure that they didn't lose much to gain their power. I'm sure that they didn't lose much to have this responsibility that they feel like they need to have, because every good hero usually has to lose something to be able to figure out what they need to have. I mean, Batman lost his parents, Superman lost his
canon event.
Planet. Exactly. Yeah, basically a canon event. Usually most people have to lose something to gain something. And so these heroes really didn't.
Wonder Woman
usually has to leave her island, or sometimes her mother dies.
What's the
Steve,
yeah.
So yeah, usually there's something lost with all of these heroes. And so I really have to see that these heroes, these new generation, didn't lose anything. So they don't know what it's like to just have this responsibility to want to do good and not have that happen to other people. They don't think of what their actions are doing to these humans that are being collateral damage, what their families might be feeling, because they never had to experience that themselves. And that's just how life works in their mind. So they just do what they want to do, because the whole great power comes with great responsibility thing, it doesn't work. It doesn't apply to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in they were, most of these heroes I think were probably just born with their powers, because a lot of them are from the older generations and stuff. But I think, part of it may be you can only learn so much through being told something. It comes with anything. You can sit there, from my experience, you can sit there in a classroom and listen to a professor talk for hours and hours and hours about a subject. That's great and that's good. But until you go out and really experience it for yourself, do it on your own, you're not going to learn anything. And even just like the theory of it all, you can rewrite down what you've been told, but until you really apply it practically,
theory will only take you so far.
Right. Until you apply it practically, you're not going to learn anything. I mean, there have been classes where I've been doing just theory, and then I had a class where I actually had to build something for engineering, and it completely flipped how I learned everything, because their theory is great and all, but in practice, it's not a textbook problem, so their parents, this older generation, can tell you with great power comes great responsibility. You have to respect human life, be careful with how you use your powers and all this stuff. They can sit there and listen to that all the time, but there's been no reason for them to apply that. There's no villains. They've had no troubles.
Yeah, the previous generation did such a good job of fulfilling their purpose as these legacy heroes up to an extent, right? I mean, we've talked about Superman and his origin in this, and all of that, or his big moment in this that sets him into exile. But for the most part, these superheroes have rid the world of the supervillains.
Right. So the newer generation doesn't have to apply anything. Right. So they're not going to learn these lessons.
There's no struggle for them. It's like I was thinking about this Friday night when we went and saw the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park.
Great movie.
By the way, a flawless movie.
Yep.
I know that you've all seen that movie, but just go back and watch it again and see if that movie still holds up 30 years later, both visually.
Try seeing it in theaters, though. That was even better.
It was so good. Cool. It was so good. But anyway, there was the moment when they are first on the island with the main characters are all on there touring the first time, like in the lab, and they go in, and BD Wong's characters in there showing them it's turning the eggs, the machine is turning the eggs and all, and this one the velociraptor egg starts to hatch. You remember that? And then and so as it's hatching, there's this part of me that even today, and this is again a testament to how well they did these effects, 30 years later, it looks so real to me that I'm empathizing with the hatching velociraptor struggling to get out of that egg. And I'm wanting to help it.
Right.
I mean, sitting there watching the movie Friday night thinking, man, just reach over there, Hammond, and help it get out of that shell. And I realize, no, you can't do that to a hatching bird, or in this case of hatching velociraptor, because it's the struggle to get out of the egg that creates the strength that it needs in order to survive when it gets out. It's the same thing with a caterpillar and a butterfly, in the chrysalis and the cocoon and everything else. And I think that what you guys are saying with this is the metahumans never had that struggle. And so because they never had the struggle, they're, one of the dangers of the older generation is we want to make things, as a parent, I'll tell you this, we want to make things so much easier for you guys. We don't want to see you guys struggle. We don't want to see you guys go through the things that we went through. So we go out of our way to make things easier for you and better, and to provide better opportunities for you. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually good, right? It's a natural instinct as a parent. But there's a part of us that needs to realize that there are times we have to let you struggle. Right? Because the struggle is what prepares you to actually be successful. And if we don't let you be, struggle towards that success, and that means potentially fail, then you don't learn what you need to learn about life to be successful. I think that's a really interesting insight that you guys have into this generational conflict because of reading a comic. We've talked about that so much, but it's really interesting that you guys are
almost 30-year-old comic, and it still applies just as well today.
Exactly. It's amazing. Let's talk a little bit more about that because, some of these metahumans are, as you guys have mentioned, almost direct descendants or proteges, at least, of some of these iconic heroes, these legacy heroes on that. Sam, how do these legacy and parental expectations of the Batmans and the Flash Gordons, did I say that? Wow. The Green Lanterns. I was thinking about Green Lantern and somehow Flash Gordon came out. That's crazy.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't get it either. All of those. How do you feel like those expectations and the legacies actually shape the metahumans' paths and decisions in this story?
I can't remember any specific metahumans that were direct descendants from some of the older generation. I'm sure there were some, but none are coming to mind. Nate,
I don't remember any specifically, but there were just so many.
Yeah, so it's tough to say, but I would imagine you're going to have kind of like two schools of thoughts with this. You'll have, it's almost like the cliches you talk about with like pastors' kids. You'll have either the pastors' kids who are like all in for Jesus, like just all the way involved in the church, completely following after their parents, or you'll have the pastor kids who like go way out of left field, completely like the opposite of everything. I'm not saying this 100%.
It's not, because we know of specific ones that are actually well done and balanced, and the parents have raised them in a really responsible way and all that.
I'm just saying that there's a joke.
Oh, absolutely. There are cliches on both sides of that. Sure.
And I think that's kind of, you would see a similar spectrum in this. You would have the newer generation who would want to follow in their parents' footsteps. I'm pretty sure, didn't Red Robin he was on like the good side of things.
Yeah, he joins the New Justice League.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've got that side of the generation, and then you've also got didn't Wonder Woman have a daughter or something in this? Maybe.
No.
I don't know, but I'm sure there's obviously plenty of examples of the newer generation who did not.
Even if they weren't direct descendants, they were being mentored and brought along by that generation.
Yeah, and clearly there were descendants who went the other route. I mean, that's the whole MacGuffin of this story, is that conflict. So I think that it's either going to help or hinder the paths that these heroes take.
Nate, do you feel like these metahumans, some of them maybe like we talked about Red Robin, and that's a really interesting story because of the conflict that always exists within the Batman stories between Bruce and Dick. Because that's Red Robin, right? In this story.
I think in this one, yeah.
Is Red Robin?
Yeah, he becomes that in this story. He is. But it's funny how Batman seems to let his proteges, the Robins, struggle and fail.
Definitely.
all the
Or die.
time or die, and that lends to them being better heroes as adults. With that, I think that's really interesting. You know, do you feel like there's some of these that you have a Red Robin that comes in and does feel like he needs to honor the legacy of Batman, but you have others that feel like, no, I'm just going to rebel against it, or maybe even redefine their predecessors' legacies. Maybe not even just in the Kingdom Come story, but in other stories that relate to these kind of protege relationships in the DC world.
I think in Kingdom Come, specifically with the newer generation, I feel like most of them don't care about the legacies that they're following. I don't think that they care about the old world. I feel like they want to make it known that superheroes are different now, and not rebel against, but just a genuine kind of, they don't really care about what happened back in the past, and it's new now. But when it comes to other stories out of Kingdom Come, depends on the proteges, honestly. But when it comes to Batman, yeah, a lot of them sometimes feel like they need to rebel and do their own thing at some point, and then they usually come back and it's all figured out at that end. But with most proteges, they want to honor the legacy that they're following, and usually, you know, in the Batman stories, they want to honor his legacy as well, especially in some of the versions of the main continuity where he passes away. They all step up to kind of fill in that
like
role and help out
game,
right? Because it's just, they want to honor who he was, and so usually they want to honor them. But I just feel like in this story, the new heroes don't really care. Most of the new heroes don't care.
What do you think, Nate, considering kind of the way that we see them living things out, and maybe even the way it resolves, but specifically how they are in the meat of the Kingdom Come story? What kind of world do you think these younger metahumans sort of envision for the future? What are they trying to create? Maybe even if it's selfish just for themselves, what are they trying to leave?
Most likely a world of just metahumans, if they could, because I feel like they don't care about human life. They couldn't care less what the humans do, and they just want to live in their power, and they look down on these humans. And I feel like they wouldn't blink an eye if the humans were gone, and they would just live life as normal. So probably just a world without humans is what they imagine is the best, for kind of like a Viltrumite kind of ideology from Invincible, Omni-Man's kind of his race. They want to see, you know, that other life is inferior. Their life is the only one that matters on the planets that they try to conquer. And so that's really what this feels like, is they don't care about the humans. They just want to see the metahumans be the main race. Main species.
I don't think that, I mean, I'm not saying that couldn't be it, but in my opinion, I don't think this generation has a plan for the future. I don't think they care.
Metahuman generation?
Yeah, I don't think they care. I think it's they're so comfortable with their current life. Why try to worry about the future? You know, like, there's no reason to worry about the future. Life is great right now. Let's just live in the moment. And I think that's dangerous even nowadays, is if you don't think about what's the future going to look like if you keep going down this path. You know, you're going to end up down a path you don't like because you weren't preparing for it. And I think that's kind of where the metahumans are in this story. They're like, yeah, everything's cool. We're out of powers. Everything's hunky-dory. And I think if they did continue down that path, I mean, we would have seen it. Everyone would have died. I mean, all the metahumans would have been killed, and humanity would have been left without its defenders, and it would not be a good time. So I personally think that's where they're at in this, but
I think it's an interesting parallel into our world today, and that applies to, and I'm going to kind of step into some kind of territory that may feel a little bit controversial, but I'm not trying to be. This idea of privilege, and we're not going to define where that privilege comes from, or whether or not it's it's because you're born with privilege or whatever. I mean, I guess the reality is, let's say, people that have more provided to them, right? More opportunities provided to them, be it through financial means because of their family situation, or societal privilege or status, or the country that they lived in, that they live in. When you have more, you tend to only see, it's the idea of that's a first world problem. We get worried about a lot of things that are like a big deal to us, right? We get all upset and frustrated about something.
Wi-Fi went down.
Oh my gosh, that's a terrible. It was you see people social media talking about how a horrible, day for stuff like that, right? Meanwhile, like we're at church yesterday, and you weren't able to go, Sam, but we have a gentleman that was sharing about being born and raised in Haiti, and living in just some of the worst poverty that you can possibly imagine, growing up in that. And he's sent off to live with his dad, and his mom found out. And I don't know if you picked up on this phrase that he said when he was sharing his story, Nathan, but he was talking about he's living with his dad, and his mom had to come and pull him out of that situation and move him with his his mother's sister-in-law, because his words, "My dad beat me up a little too much." He views that. His life was too rough because I got beat up too much.
Not just beat up.
Yeah.
Just too much.
In our world, we'd look at that as being like, you hit a child like that one time.
Jail.
And they should go to jail. And take that kid away. And he comes from a different world. And I'm not saying that world is different or better or whatever. I'm saying it's
different.
It's different. And we view life so much differently than that. And I think that in the metahuman story, there's the danger being presented that they live in a world where there's no supervillains, that they have this unbelievable power, and the humans aren't even a concern. Just like, you live in a wealthy first world type scenario, and the people that are struggling for basic living, necessities like clean water and sanitation for their living situation and enough food. He in the first service, Nate, he got up and he talked about he woke up every day for the first 18 years of his life and literally didn't know where he was going to find food for that day. And the lesson that he learned was actually the lesson he learned from his mom, who was a Christian. He said he wasn't a Christian at the time, but his mom was a Christian, and she kept saying, well, God provides our needs every single day, and we'll find food. God will bring us food today. And we walk away thinking, man, if I don't have an X in our 401k and I don't have all of this, and we've got, some food that we maybe didn't really want to eat that's in our cabinet, we don't have anything to eat. Right. And I think it's a really interesting, sorry, I'm digressing, but I do think that it applies from this story, with this. Sam, do you think that the vision that the metahumans have and the older heroes in this story have for the future of Earth in the Kingdom Come universe is at odds with each other, or is there really a potential for common ground and collaboration throughout this story, especially in the resolution to the story?
I think a common ground that anyone can see is they want a more peaceful, easier future. That's just been humanity's what they've striven for as long as we've got recorded history, is an easier tomorrow, a safer tomorrow. And while the metahumans probably are going about it the wrong way, I think that if them and the old guard kind of sat down and talk, they would realize that they ultimately want the same thing. It's just that their methodology isn't quite right. And I think they could find a good middle ground, because there is commonality between both generations. They just need to put their differences aside for a minute and find that.
Let's. I know that we've had basically an entire episode of Dad Moment, but we'll
have a final.
We'll share a specific Dad Moment now.
I am your father.
So as I read through Kingdom Come, I can't help but draw some parallels between the tensions of the metahumans and the challenges that every generation faces. Obviously, we've been talking about that this entire episode. There's this natural desire in the young to kind of carve out their own identity and to break away and redefine the world in their own terms. It kind of reminds me of how each generation, even outside the comics, believes that they've found a better way for challenging the norms of the older generation. But with that zeal, just like you guys have said all throughout this episode, there's also a responsibility that comes with it. And the younger metahumans with their raw power, their strong wills, symbolize kind of this youthful energy, but they also wrestle and grapple with the weight of the legacy of the generation before. Their struggle is very similar to our journey that we face in each of our generations, where we need to respect the past, and yet we have this desire to build our own future, like you were saying a minute ago, Sam. As we see in this story, sometimes these differing visions can clash, creating these rifts and these divisions. That also reminds us of the importance of understanding dialogue, of finding common ground with this. And there's a lesson in there for all of us about honoring the wisdom of the past while also navigating the promises and the challenges and the perils of the future. So
nice.
Enough about that. Let's. I think that's going to do it. That's going to be get through the episode.
Good episode.
That's good.
Good episode.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much
Yes.
for listening to the show.
Thank you very much.
Where can people share what they think about the metahumans and our conversation of it? Any ideas of people where people could share?
You can do it on Twitter X.
That's literally what people are starting to call it. Just Twitter X.
Yeah. Don't know what else you're going to call it.
Why he hasn't changed the name to that?
You can find us there. You can find us on Facebook, Threads, Instagram. We got a website. Yeah. It's all Tatooine Sons, SONS. You can find us on pretty much any social media platform and share your thoughts there.
Yeah, you can also email us at djesse, Jesse, at tatooinesons.com. You can do that. If people like the show, Nate, what can they do to let us know?
Hopefully you like the show, but to let us know, you can leave a review on any of the app that you're listening to, or any of the apps you listen to us to. You can do it on different ones, but usually they have a review section. If not, they sometimes have a rating section, and you can rate and review us. We'd love to
5 stars.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
But we'll read your reviews when we get notifications of them, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the show.
Absolutely. And if this causes you to think a little bit differently about some of these stories, and maybe if it causes you to look at these stories going forward from a different lens. Maybe you've just watched them and thought, man, or read these comics and watched these movies and TV series and thought, man, these are great stories, and then move on. But if now you hear these kinds of conversations and they allow you to look at them a little bit more deeply and stuff, then we've accomplished our goal, because we do, we've said it all along. Pop culture is the mythology of this generation, and these stories are important, and I think they help us to have conversations that we would not otherwise be able to have. So we appreciate that, and we thank you for listening to us have these kinds of conversations. This was a very different episode.
It was
a little bit
for us, but I think it was an important episode, and so I appreciate you taking some time to listen, and please share it with your community, your fans. You may have fans.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, you may be a really important, superhero that has lots of fans and listens to those superheroes don't exist, though, do they?
Unfortunately, we need to fix that.
Superman, maybe like an Iron Man and a Batman. You can become Iron Man, Sam.
Okay, yeah, that's my
and
goal.
Nate, you'll become Batman.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that good? All right, and then then if you have your fans, then you can do that too. Thank you.
Yes,
and
thank you
for listening to the show. Anything else you guys would like to say?
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.